we head into an even deeper dive now with the people who spearheaded the research in 5 of the 8 countries. If you're interested in figuring out where some of the strengths came from, why some of the weaknesses materialized the way that they did, we'll likely hear some of that in this next session. So I'm going to hand the reins over now to Professor Lila Rao-Graham, who is another Global Data Barometer Regional Coordinator out of the Caribbean Open Institute. And she has with her, as I said, 5 of the researchers who spearheaded this project within 5 of the 8 participating Caribbean countries. So Professor, I'm going to let you take the reins to go ahead and start this researchers roundtable.
Thanks so much, Faye, and welcome everyone. So it's now time to hear from our researchers, those that were on the ground conducting the survey and collecting the data. We were really fortunate to be able to assemble a high quality, diverse team of experienced researchers, data experts and policy advocates to join our GDB Caribbean team. We were really fortunate. We put out the call and we got some extremely qualified persons. So we're really happy about that. These researchers have a range of experiences with open data, the use of data for monitoring or evaluating public sector delivery, and training or capacity building around the use of data to create socially valuable applications. Several of our researchers have also participated in previous editions of the Open Data Barometer, as well as a World Bank Open Data Readiness Assessment for countries in the Caribbean. The team therefore brings valuable perspective and insights from these collective experiences. We will actually only be hearing from 4 of our 8 researchers. We have one, Victor, who's unable, we hope he's here, but he's unable to speak. He has no voice, so he's listening intently and will participate as best as he can. So the 4 researchers we'll be hearing from today are Louise Matre-Seria, who conducted the survey for St. Lucia, Michelle McLeod, who conducted the survey for Jamaica, Yassine Kaladi, who conducted the survey for Haiti, and Fitzgerald, who we call Jerry, conducted the survey for Belize. As I said, we must recognize the other members of 4 other members of our research team. Victor, who should have been here, but we also, he covered Dominican Republic, Michael Yishu, the Bahamas, Sutherland George, Trinidad and Tobago, and Laura Jan Obermully for Ghana. So those were the 4 or 5 we don't have with us today. So I'm going to start the roundtable with a question for each of our panelists. Michelle, I'm going to start with you. We have 2 minutes to respond. We have a limited time, so we're going to try to stick to those 2 minutes. And we know how much effort you spent, but let's see how we can pack it in that time. So Michelle, you were a researcher for the previous Open Data Barometer. What differences did you find with the Global Data Barometer in terms of its scope and or methodology?
Okay, thank you, Professor Graham, and good evening, everyone. And congratulations to Caribbean Open Institute in putting forward the Global Data Barometer. I've been associated with the whole open data theme since 2015, and probably did about 3 or 4 various open data barometers. And my main finding in terms of the difference, of course, with the Global Data Barometer is that it was a step back in terms of, do we have the existence of the data to begin with? And so that you can work even before you think about the openness of it, the openness, it's available online, free to use and reuse, etc. What is the very existence? So I found the Global Data Barometer really looked at a very comprehensive way of the data across all sectors in the economy. I also found the methodology to be a bit stricter and more detailed, and required a lot more effort in terms of completing it. And it was timely because it happened across a pandemic, which was a situation that tested a lot of our capacities. One of the things I always found, though, is that the difference between developed and developing countries in terms of data. We in the Caribbean, we're developing, and we always have to be mindful of our own resources and to ensure that the instruments that are being used to measure really take into account some of the challenges we have in terms of the developing countries. And so I found the Open Data Barometer actually took a lot more into account the context of the developing countries. And so going forward, I hope the Global Data Barometer would look at that a bit more.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Michelle. And Silvana, we can note these suggestions and we can consider them as we move forward. So Jerry, you're up next. In terms of the engagement with public sector officials and collection of data for this survey, what were some of the obstacles you faced? And do you have any recommendations in terms of how these obstacles can be overcome in the next cycle?
Greetings, everyone. All protocols observed. Thank you, Lila. And as you noted, I did research on Belize. I found the public sector officials with whom I spoke to be supportive of more open government. The main challenge I had was the poor availability of data for development on government websites. This reflects the government default, in my view, of restricted access to information, as well as the need for more investments in e-governance. The paper-based government and operations are, of course, well entrenched. However, use of information communication technologies by the whole of our societies, as you all know, advancing exponentially, spurred on significantly by the COVID pandemic, which Michelle alluded to. We need to build on the efforts that were made to keep governance running during COVID by widespread adoption of ICT to get government to the people. We must not turn back the clock on those developments. Rather, we must learn from the missteps and continue to advance digital government, and alongside that, open government. We have to rethink what is secret and classified, as analysis of what is classified at different levels of restricted access too often has no objective basis in terms of improving governance or protecting privacy. Information is power, and that power needs to be with the people to strengthen our democracies.
Thanks, Jerry. And I think this issue about privacy and security versus openness and sharing is going to be one that reoccurs, and I'm sure Dr. McNaughton will take into the next session. Louise, St. Lucia was one of the first countries in the Caribbean with an open data policy. Based on the findings from the GDB study, how do you think they need to continue to build momentum in developing the public data ecosystem there?
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. The open data policy, well, the existence of it really reflected the score that, since you said based on the score, St. Lucia's capability was closer to the average in the region and was a more favorable score. But when you look at the score that St. Lucia had for availability, it was 9.1, and it was way less favorable and further away from what would be the what is aimed for in terms of accomplishing the best practice in terms of open data. This was basically because, well, you could look at it from two ends. From one end, in some cases, the data was not being collected. So when you look at political integrity data, certain classifications of that data was not being collected at all. And so St. Lucia would need to update some of its legislation and other policies that require that that data is actually captured and collected. And on the other end of the spectrum, in cases where the data is collected, it's not being made available proactively. And it's a very well-written open data policy that actually speaks to that proactive availability of data. So when you talk about open budget and spending data, for example, that data is available, but it was not being made proactively available in open format. And there are some categories that data needs to be collected in and made available in. So that's just in terms of a start, in terms of improving availability of data. How does St. Lucia accomplish that? We could speak to change management within agencies, increasing the awareness of the open data policy and what is contained within it, and ensuring that governments have capacity, continuous awareness of St. Lucia can, of course, continue that momentum by ensuring that the public open policy is connected with, and by that, in that they could increase another score, which is the 16 in use and impact. So with that, you could be, there's a need to build civil society and advocacy for open data, and ensure that the journalists and the researchers actually know that where to find that data when it's made available, and have the interest in and capacity to utilize it. And so that ecosystem that would exist would sort of feed into each other and help to build momentum, because as civil society grows and advocates, they can then ensure that the government is held accountable, and that in that way, the St. Lucia could keep that momentum going for a much improved score in the next GDB. And of course, as was said earlier, they need to pay attention to the details of this report to see what changes need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. We lost you in a little bit in the middle, but we heard the end, and we know the issue of availability, not just having the data, but how do people know about it, where it can be found, and so it's easily identified to be shared. So thanks for that. Yassine, the GDB's findings suggest inadequate investment in digital skills training in the public sector in the Caribbean. Given the experience that you've had in implementing or evaluating national and regional digital policies, how do you think this can be addressed on a broad scale in order for the region to begin to realize the benefits of data for the public good?
Yes, thank you very much. Skills in the public sector in particular tend to take a long time to roll out. Development of programs and capacities, and of course there is the entry level digital skills at the entry level. I mean, obviously today in many of the countries it's better than 10 years ago in terms of digital capacities and abilities, but in particular for what is data, managing data, working with data, getting out the most of data, there is still something to do. And that will depend, of course, if there is both a digital, let's say, skills at the national level, but also within the e-government strategies and the open data strategies, specific actions towards specific subsets of people, of public servants who need specific skills, not only to be able to do the basic digital, management of things, but a little bit more to become data, I don't know if scientist the word, but to become more skilled to work with data and to get out the most. Data is wonderful. Once you get to work with data and play with data, you can get so many things, and it's really like, wow. And this is the kind of thing that it takes time. It takes, of course you have the ability, but then if you are able to see that how it impacts what you're doing, not just for the sake of doing, having skills, but really what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve at the individual level, and same at the policy level. So if you are making a government more efficient and you want to enhance the interoperability or the capacity of using data from different sources, different ministries, different agencies, and move the data, you need people to be, let's say, smart enough to be able to play with these things. But then they understand that what they're doing is part of a larger, it's not data just for the sake of data, but it's because we're bettering public services, we're bettering education, we're bettering, I don't know, climate change mitigation, we're bettering the resilience of our people and societies, etc. So there is a major, let's say, higher goal to it. And so you have to attach whatever skills or training or capacity building to this higher perspective, let's say, of why we're doing that.
Yes, thank you. I think digital skills training is another opportunity even for sharing, right? A lot of us are doing, a lot of countries are doing different initiatives for these digital skills training. And again, maybe some sharing would be useful in this area also. Okay, so that would be the first round. I'm going to ask each of you to close with a 1-minute reflection on what the Caribbean region needs to focus on to improve its rating on the GDB index. And just feel free to emphasize one or more of the GD pillars in your response. Both Silvana and Susanna have highlighted those pillars. So we'll start in reverse order maybe. Yassine, you want to go first?
I had to do the research was for Haiti. And I have to say I was sad to see how much was lost. I mean, I did the ODRA in 2015 with the World Bank in Haiti. So I had the opportunity. At that time, there was still some e-government plans, little units, in charge of e-government here and there, some things, and all that has been lost, and a lot has been lost. There are still some bubbles of good data, let's say, but it's really bubbles. Either it's linked to a person in a certain institution or to an international partner or donor program. But the deliquescence of the, let's say, institutionality in Haiti is so terrible and so bad that a lot has been lost. Even websites that were working 1 year ago that had data are no more updated, no more upgraded. And then you go back but you find another small data set somewhere. It's really the institutional part. So unfortunately, I had maybe the most difficult, let's say, environment in terms of developing open data, which is Haiti, which has a lot of wonderful people who know how to work with data. There are some bubbles that produce excellent data, but the whole institutional framework is not there. Of course, the legal framework is not there, the policy is not there, and I think that the state is so weak and unable to work efficiently that I mean, really, it takes to fix the institutional problem of Haiti to have a really open data being able to develop open data. So it's really much bigger and a much larger problem than just open data. It's really the institutions.
Thanks, Yassine. We can discuss that later in the question answer too. Louise, you want to go next? Your 1-minute reflection?
Yeah. Well, I thought about it, and I really believe that it has to do with the public. So in terms of advocates, the strength of the civil society that drives the advocacy for open data, I believe that will help with the sustainability of open data programs, because you may find at the senior political level, you might have a champion this round of government, and at the next round, that person is not there. But if the persons who give the votes strongly demand open data, a strong open data ecosystem, and those who use the data are very active, then there will consistently be that pressure on the government to continuously improve the way in which they collect and share the data. So I believe we should focus on building the civil society, improving increasing use cases, and strengthening that advocacy part of it in the region.
Thank you, Louise. Jerry? Jerry, we're not hearing you. You're muted.
Okay, good. I unmuted and then muted myself again. Yeah, I'm going to follow on a little bit, I think, on what Louise was talking about, because the governance pillar is the one I want to focus on. And I think in the Caribbean, we need to focus on more openness in political party financing and asset declarations by politicians, so that society can get a better handle on how political activities finance. In other words, they make their voting choices. It is useful for Caribbean citizens to know who is potentially influencing their political leaders. Information on climate change issues also needs to be more widely disseminated, given the vulnerability of the island Caribbean and some coastal areas of the continental countries with Caribbean coastlines. Also, Caribbean public sectors need to retrain public sector staff to say yes to information requests as a default, as against the current default mode of saying no to information requests.
Thank you, Jerry. And Michelle, you're the final one up.
Yes, leave the best for last. I mean, I'm looking at the early days now. Maurice, Yassim, and Kim, Caribbean Open Institute. Those very early days of starting the open data movement. I really hope we don't lose that drive for openness across the Caribbean. More and more we are finding institutions wanting to charge fees to get data and so on. We need to find a way to continue to sharing information and data with each other. We are a small region, a small population, the English-speaking Caribbean, even smaller. And so we need to continue to share with each other, because data is, as you say, the new oil. Knowledge sharing, it's all part of it. And we need to have that openness. So if someone asks a request, it should be provided so that they can use that data and information to help whatever decisions they're making. So I hope with all that is happening, we don't lose that openness that we need across the region to really make things work.
Yes, and I think the sharing is the critical part, right? So, well, I want to thank you. This does bring an end to our researcher session. It doesn't at all reflect the amount of effort that they put in, given the time we gave them to speak. So they have a lot more to contribute. But if you have any questions and answers for our researchers, you could just hold it to the main question and answer session, and we can address these questions then also. So over to you, Fane.